Over the last few weeks and months, I've created a couple of different videos talking about scarcity and rarity, talking about ratio variants and exclusive store variants, and both of these topics to some degree or another kind of revolve around something that is exclusive, something that is hard to find, something that has limited availability. And so as I noodled those topics, it kind of prompted me to look within my own collection at books that I actually have that might actually be rare. And so the criteria that I used for the books that I'm going to be showing is really twofold. It is one, the print run, the true print run. And it's also the information that I was able to find in the CGC census. Both of these things kind of give me some idea regarding the rarity of the books that I'm going to be showing. And if you ever see these books, you might want to pick them up. And in some cases, you may never see these books because I do believe that these books are pretty rare. So with that said, I hope that you guys enjoy this video. This content is sponsored by BCW Supplies. Visit them at bcwsupplies.com. Reggie here, your friendly neighborhood bodybuilder and comic book collector, and I want to welcome you to another one of my videos. In this video, I am going to be showcasing a handful of books from my collection that are actually rare books. And I can tell you, rarity / scarcity is part of what drives some of the speculation in the comic book market, right? Especially when you're talking about things like ratio variants. The higher the ratio, the more exclusive that book is because there are a limited number of those books. But one of the challenges with modern books is that we don't necessarily know how many were printed. We know how many were distributed, and that's what the ratio variance actually speaks to, is distribution, but not necessarily print run, and certainly not to census. And so what I want to show in this video are a couple of books that have, based upon everything that I've seen and been able to find, low print runs, like fixed print runs, and they also have a limited availability in the CGC census. So the first book that I want to show you, I think is a really cool book, and it has become even more important based upon a video that I just saw today. The book in question is Graphic Fantasy #1. Now, this is number 269 out of 300 books. So only 300 of this book was printed, and I know this because on the back, Erik Larsen actually signed 269/300, and he signed it along with a couple of his buddies. Now, what I just found out in a video that was done by Erik Larsen is that he and a couple of buddies actually printed this book up when they were 19 years old. I guess they were living in Washington and they wanted to get the word out about their creations. And Erik Larsen's was, of course, the dragon, who later became known as the Savage Dragon, and he added the word savage to his name because of some copyright infringement or something like that. But come to find out, the dragon was a character that he had been drawing since he was a very young child, and he kind of continued all the way through, basically into adulthood, when he became Savage Dragon, and he was drawing him, and still does, at Image. And so I thought that was a really cool thing. But this book is very limited, and this book is actually signed. I want to say that there are roughly 10 of these on the CGC census. All of them are qualified because I think all of them are signed on the back. And all 10 range somewhere between, I think, 9.2 and I want to say 9.6 maybe. So again, a relatively limited availability with this particular book. My hope is to actually at some point get this book slabbed and better preserved because it truly is a rare book. So the next book on the list is another graphic fantasy by Erik Larson, and this is actually number 348 out of 450. There are only 6 of these on the CGC census, and I think all 6 are also qualified, and they range, I want to say, between 9.2 and 9.4. But a really awesome book, again, featuring prominently the dragon later known as the Savage Dragon. The next book that I want to show is another graphic fantasy, specifically graphic fantasy number 3. This is number 25 out of 500. And yes, the print quantities are going up on these, I think, because Erik and his buddies realized that they had a market for these books. And so as they did subsequent print runs for each issue, they realized that they could increase their number and actually make a little bit more money. But again, this is number 25 out of 500. And I want to say that there are only 3 of these on the CGC census. I think 2 of them are Blue Label, Universal, and 1 is a qualified. This book, like the other 2, are also signed by Erik Larson and his friends. Now, what's crazy about these graphic fantasy books is I almost did not pick them up. I recognize that they were some early Erik Larson work, but I'm a Savage Dragon fan, but not the biggest Savage Dragon fan. And at the time, I was picking up a large quantity of books, and this was potentially going to be, a little bit more than what I was able to take on. But I'm glad that I was able to pick these books up because they are really, really cool. And I honestly did not recognize the true significance, right? And the fact that these books were truly rare until after the haul, and I started to do some research and was like, these books are really cool. And you just sometimes don't know, because unlike some of the slabs that are on the wall behind me, you see them all the time and you recognize them and you know that they're significant and you know that they're cool, and they feature characters that you have always wanted to own and to read. The Savage Dragon, the graphic fantasy books, are a little different than that. These books, or these characters, were a little off the beaten path, right? This is a self-published book, and it's hard in the moment to really wrap your mind around the fact of what you're looking at isn't something that is seen all that often. But again, I'm glad that I was able to pick these books up because they are really, really cool. And the fact that there are so few of them on the census makes them extra special. It gives me an opportunity to tell some really cool stories when I'm talking to people who happen to be Erik Larson fans or fans of Savage Dragon, because in many cases, I've spoken to some pretty knowledgeable and experienced people that have never seen these books. And again, that's what makes this really cool. And I'm so pleased that these are actually part of my collection. And I'm very thankful to have had the opportunity to pick these books up. So the next set of books that I want to show you is my tribute to Steve Ditko. When Steve Ditko passed away, a lot of people went out and bought some of his early Amazing Spider-Man books. They picked up some of his DC books, and I decided to take a slightly different approach. At the time of his passing, I started watching a lot of videos and documentaries and reading articles about Steve Ditko to better understand him as an artist, because I wanted to understand him and I wanted to understand what motivated him to do some of the things that he did. And so as part of my research, I stumbled upon the fact that he had created a character not for DC and not for Marvel. It was a character that he had created for himself. And I actually have a whole video on this, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here, but the character that he created was a person by the name of Mr. A. And as I did my research on Mr. A, I realized that not a whole lot of people knew who he was, and not a whole lot of people ever purchased his book. In fact, when I checked the CGC census, I only found there were probably fewer than 5. And I'm a little uncertain right now because when I went to pull up the data for this first issue before recording this video, I was not able to find any information in the CGC census about issue number 1 of Mr. A. This is a really cool book though. The artwork is pretty cool on the cover. The interior art, just like the graphic fantasy books, is black and white. And Mr. A is black and white. And so the fact that the interior panels and pages are black and white says a lot about the character, and it also says a lot about Steve Ditko. And again, go back and watch the video because I think a lot of this stuff will make sense. But this is just a really, really cool book to own. There are only a handful of books on the census about this when I was able to find information, but a very cool book that I don't think I've ever actually been able to find another copy of this book online since I picked this one up, which is part of the reason when I had an opportunity to buy issue number 2, I actually picked up 2 copies. The seller at the time actually had 2 copies available for a low price. I reached out to him. We were able to strike a deal for both books at a lower price, and I'm very pleased that I did. This book on the CGC census, there are only, I think, 3 of them total out there, and I own two of these books. Now I can tell you this one is in better shape than the other. I think that they can both benefit from a press, probably not a clean, but they can definitely both benefit from a press. They have some corner damage and stuff like that. But again, it's a really, really cool book to own, and there are actually a couple of years, I think, between issue number 1 and issue number 2, and again, it just goes to the creativity of Steve Ditko. So there you have it, a couple of, in my opinion, really cool books from my collection that are truly, truly rare books that you just don't see all that often. As always, I want to thank you guys for taking the time to watch this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. Be sure to visit BCW Supplies to learn about their more than 950 plus products for collectors. Products include card sleeves, display cases, comic bags, storage boxes, and gaming folders, just to name a few items. Head over to BCW Supplies today for more information.